Billy J. Kramer was part of that British invasion. He got the J from a suggestion from John Lennon. He had hits like Bad to Me and Little Children. And of course, I brought him into Expo 86 when I conducted this interview.
And looking back, there was Brian Epstein and George Martin. How did all of this come together for Billy J. Kramer?
It was just a rock scene around Liverpool. Like most cities have. And I was spotted by Brian Epstein because I was sort of doing the local sort of the circuit with a local band, and he just offered me a contract that I couldn't refuse. The first real professional stint I did, which I call the Make or Break place, which was the Star Club in Hamburg. I did that, and Gene Vincent was headlining there, actually.
Is it true? Because I knew Gene as a very humble, quiet guy.
Yes.
The way he appeared, though, Jack Good put him in a big leather jacket and made him look a little bit ominous.
Yeah, well, I've there was all sorts of stories that he pulled out guns on people and all this, that, and the other, but I mean, let's face it, I'd never been anywhere really in my life, and I sort of ended up doing the Star Club, and I wasn't sort of earning a lot of money, and he was very nice, and he used to say, you're coming out later tonight, and I used to say, I'm sorry, I've got no money, and quite honestly, I'm not just saying this or trying to be humble. I don't like going out without any money, but he used to insist, and we used to sort of like go into a bar, and I'd just drink Coca-Cola and play darts, and I just found him to be, all right.
Really a down-to-earth guy, yeah.
Yeah.
The hits you had, they seemed to come one after another there in a period of 2 or 3 years. That must have been an exciting time, but also at the same time must have worn you out going all over and touring and everything.
It was, I always say that I was living at 1,000 miles an hour.
Good line.
I remember sort of like sitting down at home and thinking, I've been around the world 2.5 times in a fortnight.
The Americans had, commanded the charts in England and around the world, and all of a sudden, all the attention was on the British performers. It was a great Renaissance period. Gave all of you a chance to be performers.
Let's face it. At that time, before the Beatles, I don't think Britain had what I call a real record industry.
That's true.
It didn't get any real big recognition. I've got to be honest with you, I think the Beatles opened the gateway for us all.
Sure, before that, as we know, there was Tommy Steele and Marty Wilde and Cliff Richard, but
they'd never taken off, and quite honestly, I came to the United States and I did a promotional tour before the Beatles, and there was no big deal about it, and it didn't sort of make my record sell. Quite honestly, I still say to this day, I couldn't understand really why Brian had this thing that I had sort of like the boy next door image, and that I was, if anybody was going to take off in America, I would, and I thought that was a bit, I always knew the Beatles would. I don't know about anybody else, I've got to be honest.
But I remember, you're right, because I remember when you were always showing on television, nice suit and a tie and all that, but that was not you?
Well, sort of, it's very strange because I used to wear very flash things on stage, like gold lamy jackets and pink lamy and things like that. And when Brian asked the Dakotas, would they back me because they were a name in their own right, and they said, not if he wears all that sort of gear. And he says, no, I'm going to get him a bit more refined than that. And, I just sort of took to wearing sort of suits and that. I was, apart from on stage, I must admit I was a conventional dresser, really.
The way I look back at Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, the songs that you initially did seemed to be Beatles songs. Was there a specific reason why Epstein and George Martin wanted you to do that?
Well, none of us were particularly sort of into writing songs. And obviously, I was sort of doing all the tours with the Beatles, which, it did give me, obviously, access, So, as I say, do you want to know a secret? A lot of people always ask me, did I get that off their first album? But I did. Pardon?
It's the other way around, isn't it?
I'd recorded the song, I'd been doing it live. And, like Bad to Me, I remember I was doing a week. We did all seaside towns throughout the summer, And I was doing a week in a theatre in Bournemouth, and John Lennon said, you know, I've written you a great song.
In the beginning, with the Beatles, when it happened in England, and then of course in North America, and then the world, were they easy to get along with in those days, the four guys, or what?
Well, that is the amazing thing. I mean, a lot of people, you know, would imagine that they would get sort of very heady and big time and whatever, but I mean, there was no big deal about it.
What do you do now, Billy? I mean, you're here with the legends of rock and roll, and we're so happy to have you here with your music and everything. But what do you do? Are you tour around?
I tour around, yes, and I now live in the States, and I do sort of like reunion things like this. I also do things with a band that I work with all the time.
What a neat thing to be, though, Billy. A part of history in a particular time, troubled times, really, in the world, and yet the whole thing happened there for all the British acts. I thought it was a tremendous time.
Well, I thought it was a tremendous time, and I'm glad that I did, you know, live through that period of time. It was really great, you know, and I'm still enjoying myself now.
Billy, thank you for talking with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.